Here's an example of player use of in-character elements to create an ability to improve memory in the game. Now, go way back, because I particularly like this style and this presentation. We'll go all the way back to an old Werewolf Chronicle I was running back when Werewolf was brand new. You'll probably hear me reference these guys again in subsequent clips, but they really got off on begging for renown. They called it begging for renown. I called it earning renown because I thought they were pretty cool, but I guess they felt that their elders looked down on them. But anyway, at the beginning and the end of games, we would talk about what happened, and I noticed slowly over time that recap, pre-recap and post-recap, that it began to take on the same kind of feeling as a moot. People were making sure that vital thoughts or vital deeds that they had undertaken were being remembered. And it's really something I would like to see manifest organically in a game in the future. Not all games have a social mechanic, or not mechanic, but a social quality that encourages that kind of discourse between characters as characters. But in a military-style game, you could do a review, like an after-action report, that kind of thing. There are ways to bring that in-character recapping into the game, and that's one of my favorite examples of player-driven information handling. But top marks also go out to the player of Cool Hand Luke in the MechWarrior PBEM we've been referencing, in that he built a massive, truly massive database on Google Docs for us to populate with information, threads, ideas, vehicles, plans, terrain, weather, political segmentation on the map, the whole 9 yards. Everyone could contribute to it, and as the campaign went on over 2 years, this file got bigger and bigger and bigger and more complex, and all the details were there. And I've shared that on the blog, actually, or parts of it on the blog. So if you're curious to see what they came up with, that's another great way, an in-character way of presenting a lot of this information. The characters were able to refer each other to different tabs on the spreadsheet of information, just as play was going on. And I appreciated that quite a bit as the game master. It was a really ingenious use of information and available technology, and incorporating it both in our real world and in the player's experience of the character's world. Presenting examples of role-playing skill use could take a really long time. Instead, I'd like to focus on something you might try if you've got a player who's unable to roleplay one of their core skills. So let's say that it's con, all right, and let's bow to tradition and set up a typical fantasy idea. The character needs to con a gate guard. All right. And let's say that they're familiar with this area. So your glib-tongued car salesman player with his charismatic paladin is going to easily be able to pass this situation, and everyone is groaning because the schlep in the group has drawn this straw and needs to be able to talk his way past the guard. But this guy doesn't usually catch on to all the little social hints that you drop, right? About the, maybe the low pay of the guards, or the feeling of being unappreciated, or second-class citizens among the guards, that kind of stuff that you've been dropping and dropping. The other characters and the players have all picked up on these, and they treat the guards with a little respect, and they get a little slack in return. This guy doesn't get that. So how do you do that? Do you just ask him to roll? Well, you could, actually. If he's completely incapable, but his character is, then yes, he just gets to roll, because we're dealing with the character. But let's say there's a little ambiguity in there. So, and after all, we do hope that over time his play will improve. It's all things that we enjoy doing we should get better at, right? So you're role-playing the guard, and he's role-playing his character, and we get there and his own personal limitations are getting in the way of the character being successful, so we need to throw him some rope. So the conversation might go something along the lines of the guard who's looking for a bribe directing the conversation toward money. Because after all, that guard isn't there to be a mindless challenge. That guard has a goal. He doesn't have enough money. He wants more of it. The character has it. How can he get it? He persuades the character to give him money for something that he doesn't particularly care about. Letting someone through the door. Right? It doesn't all have to be focused on story elements, like you have to beat the challenge or you fail. There are other people in the scene too, and they all have goals, and they're all equally important because, as we've said before, the universe doesn't really accept the role of protagonist. Food for thought, I hope. So let's get to a real-world example. So for Hollow Earth Expedition, I put together a scenario set in Shanghai. And one of the main events of the scenario is that a convoy is going to go from a private compound down to the docks. And it's going to go, or it's going to try to go, by some lesser traveled routes. And lots of things are going to happen to prevent this. Some are natural, some are the villains, and some are the results of the interaction between the villains and what's natural and what the characters do, and that sort of thing. So, if I run it in a narrative style, of course, I will set the thing up so that the characters are working for the guy who's running the convoy through the streets, and they have to protect the convoy. As a simulation, well, I don't know. They might be witnesses to it, they might be hired by the opposition, they might volunteer their time because they're heroes. So either way, this convoy. Now, time. This is about time. So we have lots of vehicles in a chain moving through very narrow streets. We've got all kinds of people coming and going. We've got villains blocking streets, and we've got vehicles crashing, and so the route is very fluid. So suddenly we've got vehicles going off in all kinds of different directions, or characters left without vehicles and needing to go over rooftops or through narrow alleys or whatnot. We've got the timeline fragmenting into hundreds of millions of pieces, and holy crap, how are we going to resolve this? Well, it's not such a big deal. Just remember, how far did they travel? We have a movement rate. How far did they travel? It's not even a lot of math. And I hate math. Focus on the right question and everything becomes a lot easier. So everyone has the same objective. They're trying to get to the harbor. So what's the route that's going to take them to the harbor? Even if you don't have a map, you can do this in your head. So what makes this fun is you have the villain's planned strategy for dealing with the convoy, and you have the result of the dice, which determine how effective those different things were based on what the characters did to prevent it, and how successfully the plan was performed, and etc. And how many trucks and vehicles and characters get split off at each stage, at each natural problem, at each planned problem, at each unexpected failure or amazing success. And then all of those things begin to interact with each other. right? And because you're just tracking the time, you get to discover this chase just like the players do. It's not like you planning out a chase and trying to make it exciting and build and build and build and build, which is fun and satisfying in its own right. I'm not knocking the approach, but I'm saying that the perk of doing it this way is that as you focus on tracking the time and the realistic reaction to the scenario for the NPCs and PCs and whatnot, you begin, as they do, to see what's happening, just like you're watching it in a movie. And it's a blast. Okay. Something to consider. Thanks for listening.